City Council special meeting to order. I'm going to ask for Mr. Murphy for the invocation and Mr. Posey for the pledge. Well, first let's have the clerk call the roll.
Mr. Green?
Here.
Mr. Lyden? Here. Dr. Middlebrooks?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Posey?
Here.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here. Margie, do we still have the wireless phones for people in the audience?
Yes. Could be that.
I've got a gentleman down front.
Okay.
And while she is doing that, she will stop. It's appropriate. Mr. Murphy, if you would raise it.
If you choose to, join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for another gracious day you've given us. Thank you for our city. Thank you for our residents in our city. I want to say a special prayer to Ben Abercrombie and his family as they continue to go down this journey. And just thank you to our community for joining in on Monday to support them. Also, I'd like to pray for our families still being affected in Texas and Florida and also Puerto Rico during this storm, that we keep them in our prayers as well too. And lastly, young little girl that lost her life, Levi Corner, 2 years old, in a tragic event. Pray for her family. I just pray for our city. Pray you give us the wisdom as a council to make an informed decision today. These are many blessings I ask in your son, Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Salute and pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My bride continues to remind me that we need to talk better into the microphones. She can't hear that well in Cherokee County. She's paying attention. We're going to start off with Resolution 566917, Mr. Corey.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank V. Brocato to execute a community development block grant program cooperation agreement with Jefferson County to allow the county to undertake activities necessary to plan and carry out the community development programs with federal funding in accordance with the county's consolidated plan on behalf of and in coordination with the city.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 566917.
There's a motion and a second. Tim, is this where the city's CDBG money has gone? I believe the federal has removed from giving it directly to the city.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith, that's correct. We gave up our entitlement about 2 years ago, and this would allow us to join Jefferson County and be part of their CDBG program.
Do we know how much we would qualify for?
They get a pot of money, and their pot of money is increased by having our population included in their population, and changes every year.
Any questions from Mr. Wesco?
Yes, Mr. President, does that, we know, I understand what you're saying about the way that's working, but does that mean we'll get the same amount of funding from Jefferson County, or we're gonna have to apply for certain projects to get the funding?
That's correct. We would just apply. We would work with Jefferson County. If we have a particular project that we'd like to see, then we would work with Jefferson County to see if we can get that project funded. Otherwise, if we have a specific individual that might qualify for a program that they have ongoing, we could get that person to Jefferson County and get them covered under that program.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
I know previous years we used some of the funding for after-school care for schools, as well as some funding to repair homes of those that are older citizens that don't have the means to make their own repairs. You think we'll have a shot at those?
Yes and no. The Jefferson County does have an emergency home repair program that is underway that is eligible for elderly and low-mod income individuals. So that program is there and up and running. The after-school care program became problematic for us to continue utilizing HUD money with because of their regulations regarding being able to provide us with the necessary information to indicate that those children that were receiving those funds were actually low mod income individuals.
Any other questions for Mr. Westphal?
Mr. President, one more.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Rice, Ms. Westover, do we have projects ready to go once we put in this application, perhaps from the new budget that would go and may perhaps be funded and eligible for this funding?
I don't have any at this particular time. We could certainly explore that option.
Thank you.
Open for suggestion.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, so you have to name, or say the specific projects that you want the funds to go to?
That
Apply
would,
for this?
that would probably be the way that this would work, is the way we've been usually utilizing the funding was primarily to construct or improve infrastructure. That's not necessarily the way most of those programs were operating throughout the nation. That just happened to be the way the city of Hoover was utilizing the majority of their money. We would have to, if we had an area that actually qualified by low mod income, then we could work with Jefferson County to see if we could get a project, if they had a sidewalk need or a street resurfacing need or something like that, we could work with Jefferson County trying to get that project funded.
Understand, thank you.
Anything else from the council?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
so in this agreement, is it only addressing the things that you'll be going after, or is there'll be more?
It's
General,
it's just a general.
okay, so you can't, okay.
That's
I'd
correct.
like to kind of possibly at least revisit that after-school model. I mean, you know more, we'll put it like this.
Be happy
Let's talk later and
Be happy
tell
to
me.
discuss that with you. Yes, sir.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the audience? Anything else from the council? Hearing none, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay. The ayes have it. Item number 3, resolution 5670-17, Mr. Porter.
This resolution authorizes Mayor Frank V. Mercado to execute brokerage agreements with Synovus Securities, Inc., Raymond James and Associates, Inc., and BB&T Capital Markets, with substantial other form attached as Exhibit A, as well as any other new account application documents related to it.
Mr. President, I move for approval of resolution 5670-17.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's see, is this a Mr. Yeager question, I guess? While you're coming down, there are 4 people in the room, 5, I guess, that make up the investment committee now. It's Mr. Rice, the mayor, myself, Mr. Lyda, and Mr. Posey, do the various positions that we currently hold. And this resolution came out of a meeting that was had last week, and it's something that we need to get in before the end of the month.
It would allow us to timely reinvest some of the monies that we have in our investment fund. We're better off getting it to work as quick as we can right now and sitting in our investment account. At Regions is earning 50 basis points, but we can do a lot better. So the sooner we put it to work, we buy bonds, better off we are.
Mr. Lyda, did I take time long enough to get a motion?
You did, yes, sir. Okay.
My wife says I have sometimes I forget. Any questions from the council? Any from the audience? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed nay, the ayes have it. Before we get to the next item, Mr. Corley, I believe you would like to introduce a new member of your staff.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, Rod Evans is a new lawyer who joined our firm this week, and I wanted to officially introduce him to everyone.
He's new or just new to you?
He's new to us, not a new lawyer. He's been practicing for about 8 years. He is a litigator, commercial and municipal lawyer. He has experience representing municipalities and industrial development boards. He went to Stanford University, where he graduated in political science in 2007, and then to Cumberland Law School, graduated in 2010. We're very happy to have him at our firm, and he'll be working with us here at Hoover.
Sir, are you cheaper than Mr. Corley? Well, welcome aboard. I think we're gonna give you some interesting days ahead. Things are moving in this city. Mr. Light, I believe you have an announcement.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President, for being recognized. I want to make everyone aware, if you're not aware, that the Hoover Park and Rec Foundation will be holding their 5th annual golf tournament on October 9th, beginning at 9 o'clock at Inverness Country Club. It's called the Hoover Cup. Is there an actual cup that the winner's awarded? There is. Fantastic. Okay, so you come and win and you get an actual cup that you can kiss and hold up for the cameras at the end of the tournament. But this tournament really goes to raise funds, Mr. President, for some of those really special projects that Park and Rec puts on. One of the projects they're really working toward this year, in fact, they have a goal of raising $10,000, will be to contribute toward a one-of-a-kind, boundless, fully accessible playground and splash pad. So on October 9th at 9 o'clock, I encourage you to see me after the meeting. I'm going to pass one of these out to each of my colleagues. Those of you could pass those down. But I have plenty of extras, so if you don't mind seeing me after, I'd love to talk to you more about it.
Can I sign up and not play?
Absolutely, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Do we have any other information in a quasi-report section that needs to be made before we get into the agenda? I don't think we'll need pizza tonight, I hope. But if it gets around 10 o'clock, we may need a potty break. Next, we got item 4, resolution 5671-17, Mr. Corley.
This resolution adopts the budget for the fiscal year ending September 30, 2018.
Mr. President, for the purpose of discussion, I will move for the approval of Resolution 5671-17.
Second.
Well, we're gonna have some discussion. Got a motion and a second. Dr. Lopez, is there anything that you want to start off by before we get into any questions? Mayor?
Mayor, has some comments first.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, thank you. It's a day that we've all been looking forward to, obviously. We've been here, what, about 10 months? And we've got 2 budgets in 10 months. So I think, it seems like our entire effort up here has been working on the budget. That's what we're supposed to do. We worked very, very hard to get to this point. I appreciate all of the hard work from Dr. Lopez and her staff. I'm very grateful to our department heads working so closely with us and being cooperative in making adjustments to the budget. We were committed early on to deliver a budget that could operate truly in a real fiscal year, October 1st. We're going to continue to do that. And I hope that the council has found that we have been eager to work with you, available, ready to answer your questions. And even when we did not particularly agree on a certain item, that we were able to explain ourselves well enough to see why we supported that. So as we just I'm just going to give you a little thumbnail, brief rundown of where we started. This just shows we started back in May, where we presented the budget packages to our department heads, and I won't read that all through. You're all familiar with it, but we did have a schedule, and we all were working towards this date of September 28th to adopt it. Some of the positives there that I'd like to talk about in our budget. We proposed an reduction in our operating cost by $4 million since that September the 5th draft. And of course, we talked September 11th when we were having the council hearings that we had 23 more days. We were not finished. And that's where we started, and that's where we came up with this $4 million. We've got around $8.3 million in unallocated capital project funds, which I think is very healthy, very good. We, as a group, answered a call to our school system, and we are maintaining the funding of our schools at $5 million. I think we have a capital budget, capital improvements budget that's very manageable. And we should add $100,000 to our reserve fund, currently at $32 million. And we are budgeting $3.4 million transfer. Now, that's not very unusual. We've got a long history of budgeting that way. The good news is that we have not had to use that transfer. And we hope, as we get this first full year, real year under our belt, where we can actually look and follow what's going on, we hope to be in that same situation when I'm standing before you this time next year. Some of the things, not all, but some of the things that affected our budget had a slight revenue decrease in this current fiscal year. 2016, we had 33 employees that were added to the payroll, and it is showing itself now, and I believe those 33 employees are valuable and outstanding individuals. And the last mayor and council, I think, were thoughtful and deliberate, saw a need for that. But we are seeing that increase in our payroll because of that. Our debt service, of course, increased about $3 million, and then the operation of the Finley Center. So just some things that we're having to adjust to. Nothing dramatic, nothing tragic. Our city's in good shape. We eliminated 2 full-time positions, so we're not growing our staff. One thing that we did that could really have an impact on the budget is overtime. We were able to, through the cooperation of our police chief and our librarian, we were able to take the overtime that they were spending providing police officers at the library. We were able to take that overtime, put a plan together that allowed us to hire 5 part-time officers. These are typically officers that have retired from the city of Hoover, and they can work a certain number of hours a month. We were able to take that. We were budgeting about $178,000 in overtime just for the library. We were able to man the library for all the hours that they're open, no cut-in service. And we were also able to hire additional school resource officers and eliminate the need for officers going from school to school. Now, we're short 1 school, and we're going to address that. But right now, I believe it was it 2 more, which gets us down to 1 school. And we're going to work hard to get to that one as well. We've implemented a pharmacy formulary that's going to cut our insurance costs a good bit. We hope around $300,000. And we're adding autism coverage for our employees, which is about a $60,000 to $70,000 increase. But with the decrease in the pharmacy formulary, we believe we were able to pay for that and still have significant savings. Of course, our raises, new positions, upgrades, we've all agree, I believe, that we're going to just put that on hold until we have our compensation study done. So with that, I will ask Dr. Lopez to come up, and if you have any questions of me, certainly I'm right here ready to answer them, but I'll have her come up and address any specifics that you may have as well.
Mr. Mayor, what 2 positions were eliminated?
We eliminated a battalion chief's job in the fire department and administrative assistant in the police department.
The $8 million unearmarked in the capital. I think, Mr. Lyden came up with the best terminology. I don't think it works in government accounting, but it's really surplus funds that, we able to roll from one year to the next, which is great. Is that after the possible 3.4 million adjustment?
That's already included in the budget, this budget. So if we were not to spend that and not use that,
Yeah, 11 million?
we would have 11 million.
That's great. Fantastic. Any other questions from the mayor?
Yes, Mr. President. Mayor, the, last point, pay raises, new positions, et cetera, ending with completion of the staffing survey, when do we expect to get that survey?
When is the survey, Mike? You just say the date, you don't have to come up.
We're just getting kicked off this week. Our consultants on site this week, conducting preliminary interviews. It's supposed to be a 6-month, project. So springtime, March, April, somewhere around.
So we'll get it this budget.
Yes, sir. It's budgeted, we have it budgeted.
Any other questions from the mayor?
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
a couple of questions on the capital project here. Just to, for those of you unaware, I'm a newbie to Instagram, but this past week I took over the Niche Pad Instagram account. Now, Niche Pad is the National Center on Health, Physical Activity, and Disability. They basically promote healthy, inclusive, all-inclusive communities. That's their job. So they came to me and asked that I take over their account for a day to promote what my family, as a family with a disability, does to promote a healthy lifestyle. Now I see on here on the capital projects, number 46, demolish the Bluff Park Community Center, replace the new pavilion and restrooms, as well as number 56, Veterans Park restrooms. I think both of those, since one is kind of in the eastern and one is kind of in the western section of Hoover, would be a prime opportunity. And I'm sure Dee would have a vital role in this, is to making sure that the upgrades in these restrooms also include an all-inclusive portion to those restrooms. As disabled people, especially grow older and larger and bigger, it's extremely difficult for families to care for those individuals in public restroom settings. So I'd like to see us, as part of that investment, make sure that those are all inclusive.
Middlebrooks, those will be, and those, as part of, we will follow the latest code, make sure that those are addressed. Thank you.
And just one other comment. I'd like to commend you, Mayor, for including the autism coverage in our insurance. I know this past year that Hoover was chosen by the Autism Society of Alabama to do our proclamation for Autism Awareness Month. And if we're going to promote awareness for autism, then we ought to be leading the charge and also supplying coverage for our employees for that disability. So I commend you on that, and also commend you for investing in the protection of the library. I know the library is it's a shining star of the city. It's heavily visited. A lot of our citizens utilize it constantly, so I think that presence of the police there is vital to maintaining our safety and sense of security, and also for the continued commitment to the schools. So I thank you for all those things, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else from the council? Not? Thank you, sir. Dr. Lopez. Your knees don't go out. Perhaps perhaps we should start with any changes that have occurred since the first presentation the public heard on September 5th. And move accordingly, and council may have some questions. The audience will be able to participate with questions, but it will be towards the end of the conversation after we have our part. It's probably going to take, so thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Good evening. You all should have an updated copy of the budget packet that should have been left up there, along with a big capital projects sheet. And there's some in the back too, if the audience would like any. So basically what we have here, this packet has been completely updated as far as the numbers go for all of the changes that have occurred since the mayor gave his presentation September 5th. I was going to quickly point out some highlights of that. Obviously on page 1 of the packet is the mayor's updated transmittal letter discussing some of those changes. If we go over to page 8, I'll go through this quickly and certainly stop me as we go. We added a column here, the two pink columns. Column E on this page was the original mayor's proposed budget at September 5th. Column F is the current proposed budget after the adjustments that have been made. And you can see the last column shows you the difference in those. So in order, originally when the budget was submitted on September 5th, we had approximately a $7.4 million budgeted transfer from the capital projects fund to the general fund. You will see that last column shows you $3.9 million in cuts. A little over $600,000 was related to salary and benefits, and then the majority of it, $3.2 million, was operating across all of the departments. Then on page 10, this is an updated sheet for the overall all funds payroll projection. And so with the adjustments that were made over the fiscal year 2017 budget, original budget, the payroll projection is now only $357,000 additional to what was adopted with fiscal 2017. And that is still including step increases for the employees, which was about $850,000. So, on page 16, this page, as well as one of the previous pages, we have left the original proposed budget at September 5th. It's the third column from the right, and then we've added in the current proposed budget. And the difference now is the difference between those two columns. And so this allows you to look at the operating adjustments in particular, and you can see what was actually adjusted a little bit better. Page 24. In addition to the reduction in the adjustments that were reductions, there are some specific items that were reduced. This page references the reductions and the changes that occurred up through last Saturday, which you would have received this page. So it includes the operating we talked about, the personnel we talked about, and then there were some items a few items we needed to add. Also, on capital projects, we removed one item, and then we added one item and some additional funding also for the library generator. Page 25, since last Saturday, these represent changes we made that are incorporated in these numbers since last Saturday. Since you haven't had time to necessarily see these, I'll go through these really quickly. Item 1, basically, we did previously have budgeted the police training center, but we changed the funding source for that project. And in addition, we added another $250,000. Item 2 is related to a birch tree pool liner and deck repair that was added. We made some adjustments in the court operating budget across a few funds, and then also $75,000 for tennis court maintenance. And so that page represents the changes since last Saturday. And then page 26 represents what we call the civic contributions, community service agreements. And this summarizes where we are right now with what the mayor is proposing. So the third to the left, third from the right, total column is what's being proposed with the highlighted 663,000. And you can see the additional requests for this year versus the amount that were cut from fiscal 17 amended budget, which last year was 953,000. So the reduction in those CSAs was just over 300,000. Any questions?
Any questions starting out for Dr. Lopez?
Just a quick question, Dr. Lopez, with the moving of the funds from 303 to 240 for the police training center, does that bring us up to the total amount of funds needed to build?
That is my understanding.
Mr. President, Dr. Lopez, what's the difference in the amount from last year's budget and this year's budget?
If you will turn to back to page 8, and this is going to focus on the general fund because that's more the comparable fund. It depends on how you look at that. If you look at revenue, there's a $1.3 million decrease from the fiscal 17 budget. If you look at the transfer, our transfer is basically 3.4 million, which is almost exactly what it was in fiscal 17.
Dr. Lopez, how much do you anticipate, you may have already stated this, how much do you anticipate moving in surplus funds from the current budget to the coming budget?
So right now, we are estimating that we will end fiscal 2017 with, we think, a $7 million surplus that we would transfer at the end of the year to the capital projects.
Thank you.
And just to be clear, that number is included in the $8.3 million unallocated funding that the mayor referenced earlier.
So that's a part of the $8 million figure.
That is correct.
All right, I'm ready to, would like to get into some nuts and bolts type of activity. The first being the council budget. I did not want to hold any backroom conversations where we accidentally we thought of it as deliberating. So we thought, I thought maybe we'd bring it out this evening. The mayor has left the council funding unadjusted because he felt that it was our responsibility, and rightfully so. It is the council's responsibility to determine what adjustments that we should make. And I was going to see what the council's wishes may be. I know that there are some that want to attend some municipality meetings, some other meetings out of state. So we're going to need to leave some registration and lodging and travel fees. I've got a few thoughts of my own, but I would rather hear from y'all.
Mr. President, I don't have those numbers in front of me. Can you tell me what is currently budgeted?
Well, we've got National Shopping Center Developer Meeting, certification training for elected officials and other, then additional 2,500 registration fees, the first is 2,500. especially those that were already invested in Hoover, indicated that our being there really didn't make a lot of difference. They make big deals at that kind of stuff, and they said that as long as we could maintain a very viable city and community, everything else would take care of itself. So, you've got 2,500 for the national shopping meeting, and then there's another 2,500 for additional fees. I can't make any motions, but one of the thoughts I had was removing the 2,500 for the shopping center developer meeting and leave the 2,500 for other registrations. We also have, a little further down, municipalities, National League of Cities, Congress of Cities, National Shopping Center Developer, again, certification for elected officials, training, travel expense. First one is $3,050, the second one is $3,950, and the last one, $7,000. Just off the top of my head, my thoughts were 3,000 to 32, 3,900 to 2, and the 7,000 would reduce it from 7 down to 4,000. So I'm just putting that out for your thoughts. The council doesn't have very much of a budget. Most of the council's budget is city clerk and staff. The city clerk is some of the few employees that answer directly to the council. And so we have them. Now, they have participated in reducing their wishes and wants to where they're just like everybody else. They participated in the cut it back. So really, other than training and travel, there's really not much in the budget for council members ourselves. So I guess I'll just,
Mr.
take
President,
out some conversation.
I think maybe the best way to do this is to ask and see which council members want to go to something, and we fund that, and just, I don't want to go to, honestly. I think my time's better served here, so if somebody wants to go, that's one thing. If it's one of those things where we don't, a lot of us don't foresee going to it.
I've taken into consideration what people have told me that they would like to attend, both in state and out. That's what brought me to the figures. But if anybody would like to talk about what they would like to do to make sure that it continues to be funded, now's a good time.
Mr. President, I would say that, the city pays us a very modest salary. I think it's more of an expense account, so should I decide to want to travel on city business, I'll be happy to fund that out of my own pocket. And I won't expect the city, especially in a time where we're tightening the belt to, certainly not for a rainy day, we're not getting the umbrellas out yet, but I think what the mayor and Mr. Rice and each department head have done is absolutely admirable. And Mr. President, I admire your willingness to take a look at our own budget. So to Mr. Posey's point, perhaps it might be logical to remove all travel, and then when something specifically does come up, we amend the budget for that specific request from a member.
Would that allow for a timely response for registration fees and reservations and things like that to those amendment prior to something coming up?
I think it would be incumbent on us as a member who desires to do that to ensure there is plenty of time to make that work.
Any other thoughts or conversation?
I think, training and things of that nature is key, comes with our territory. I will concur with President on his thoughts on the reductions he suggested from that standpoint. So I think that really happens our budget, if not a little bit below that. So I will concur with his thoughts on reducing it from that standpoint.
I guess I would echo what Councilman Murphy just stated. I know that the mayor has asked all departments to cut, even 10% across the board. I guess to suggest that we zero out our fund is asking a little bit more than 10%. I'd like to leave some in there just in case. Now, it's hard for me personally to travel, but I believe the members up here deserve the chance to attend certain functions and so forth, to network and learn and grow if desired. So I would agree with your original proposal, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I do like the idea of voting on, I think, when we go on, if we should go on a trip, I think that's something the public needs to know about, not that we would, want to hide anything or anything, but I do think that, if we're gonna use the public money to travel, that's such a hot issue in a lot of perception in other cities and things like that. It looks like you're just on a travel club or something like that. I think it would be good to have a public, to know what we're doing. So I kind of like the idea of us voting when one of us goes on travel. Just if for no other reason, we can tell people what we're doing, what we learned, and what we came back from, and share the story of what we did. Let the people know what the money is being spent on.
Well, I guess, one way or another, we're gonna need a motion to make line item adjustments. Categories. Gordon, I think we can take care of all these with a single vote. We need to take them by categories as they feel today.
Mr. President, I think that's up to you to, in the motion that that's raised, that you then authorize, line item adjustments, and then include that in your, to amend the motion that's on the table.
So,
Mr. President, if I could borrow your list there, I'd be happy to make a motion to that effect. If I can cheat.
Mr. President, I would just say, from the conversations up here, I think it's clear that some of us feel like there needs to be some left in there, so I feel like a line-by-line vote would be more beneficial. And then, rather than having possibly vote two different times if one fails.
all right, we're looking at three different votes.
Mr. President, last point, you made a recommendation with elimination of a line item and a reduction of 3 other line items.
Yes, sir.
Will it be a possible conclusion to just go with that recommendation, see how that vote will go versus,
Yes, sir.
a lot to go over?
We've got one that currently is at 5,000. We removed the trip to the shopping center conference, then that would remove 2,500 and leave 2,500 for other registrations and conferences or seminars. Then there's another reduction, I believe, of travel expenses for training, and how did I have that shown?
Reduce
From 7,000 to 4,000.
7,000, 4,000. Then we also have, there's a third.
There is, in fact, yeah, it would be addition, it just says fiscal year 18 additional for travel expense. At the appropriate time, I'll move that be reduced from 3,050 to 2,000
And 3,950
to 2,000.
Okay. Looks like people are shaking their heads in a appreciative manner, so I'm open for a motion.
Mr. President, I would move to amend my motion with the following changes from page 6.
I believe there may be other things as well, so I think we can just vote on these individual line item adjustments, and then we will
Okay,
vote
that's fair.
the other document as amended.
Yeah, okay. Then I would move that we reduce the shopping center developer allocation from 2,500 to 0, in essence removing it. That would leave a total of $2,500 for additional fees, registration fees. Under travel expenses for training, I would move that be reduced from 7,000 to 4,000. And under fiscal year 18, additional for travel expenses, where it's 3,050, we would reduce that to 2,000. I believe that captures it all.
Did you go from 7 to 4? Jordan?
7 to 4.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We do the 3950s.
And I'll be glad to enter this exhibit into the record if you'd like, Gene's, Mr. Smith's chicken scratches.
Yeah, I could have been a doctor. Yes, sir.
Before we start on this, thought was crossed my mind here on the shopping center conference. You haven't gone on your thoughts on this, but as far as, there's so much in our nation right now about brick and mortar business, particularly shopping centers. Do you see there would be any change from the decade ago when you went and now, for any reason that we might need to send someone to that?
There's always the possibility, but they always hold it in Vegas. Vegas isn't cheap. It'd be more than the cuts that we're making, probably more than what we're allowing ourselves in the original budget, especially if more than one goes.
I second, Councilman Hodges' motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any additional conversation? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we have that adjustment by Lopez. I've got it written here. You would like it? Well, Mr. White has mine. Are there any other line item issues? I know I've got one I'd like to talk about, but does anybody else have any line item issues that they would like to bring up?
Mr. President, I have a few on the contributions listed. It may be more of a clarification, just following up on some things that may be cutting. The first being Aldridge, I just want to clarify for the record that the funding for Aldridge is going to be paid over time because of the discussions we are having with Aldridge Gardens. It will be ongoing for a possible proposal to be brought to the city. The second line item is the funding for the Chamber of Commerce. There's been a lot of discussion about that, and probably warranting a conversation with them. Now, I understand that there's a possibility, there's a vacant room where the chamber could move into a city building and not have a storefront office here. I don't know, without talking to the chamber, how the impact for them the impact that it would hold for them on that move. But I do think that it's something to consider if we have a room that is empty that could possibly become their office area. And just speaking for myself, looking at our revenue projection and looking at it possibly not being an anomaly this year, but becoming a new normal, we really do need to have some conversation with the chamber about helping us to raise that number, to bring more businesses into the city, to recruit more businesses, to be more visible in recruiting businesses. So I would just say that on that, those are some things that I would like to explore and possibly bring that number down a little bit.
I know that the city as a whole has made several attempts to get the chamber involved with a variety of activities. And the answer to date has always been, thank you, but no. You appropriate $59,000 a year for a number of years, and it almost feels unappreciated when they don't want to participate with activities within our city. And for that, I'm very regretful. Are you wanting?
That is it, but I do want to say that, to thank you both, and thank you, Dr. Lopez, for, this was one of the areas for me that this and capital projects are the first places that you look when you're trying to cut some excess and bring a number down, and I do appreciate your conversation with me about these and the reductions that you did make on these. And thank you very much for doing that.
Do you have any motions with any of your discussion?
I would like to open the discussion with the rest of the council about the, as you said, about the chamber. I think it's something we've all discussed and we need to consider, maybe discuss amongst ourselves about how to approach that. Is it something that we want to look at making a cut, or perhaps a conversation?
Mr. Posey has cleared it for Mr. President, I'd like to talk. You know, the chamber is a first line of resource to new businesses coming to the city. And I think if we want to make any changes, I know I act as a liaison, and Mr. Lino does as well too, probably need to have more of a heart-to-heart discussion about planning down the road, as far as some things we would like to see. But you know, if we cut any of their expenses right now, it would probably come as a shock, and that's the first place a small business, a large business, or anyone looking for resources from the city to be a part of. And again, it could possibly grow to be better. And if that's the case, then we need to have that conversation. But as of per today, I think that cutting it would be problematic.
I would say to Mr. Posey's comments, I think those conversations do need to be had and discussed. Maybe if we have an empty space here, then they could relocate and save that money. I would suggest, and I guess I'm making a motion because of that, to reduce it by half, a $30,000 appropriation to the chamber. Let's have those conversations. And if it's not feasible, then mid-year we come back and look at it again to providing those extra necessary funds for them to stay where they are. But until then, we reduce it by half or to $30,000, and let's have those conversations and see if we can bring them into our building. So I motion that we reduce the Chamber of Commerce appropriation to $30,000.
Prior to that, am I in line for speaking prior to motion?
I think first we need to find out if he even has a second. If not, it will die for a lack of a second.
Mr. President, I think after the conversation, we can definitely always have a budget amendment if the council chooses to look at that, but as of right now, and I understand all of my fellow councilmen's point, but again, let's start a dialogue and then move down the road as the year progresses.
Well, I think the reduction will bring them to the table a lot quicker, and a lot more in earnest, and be able to put it back later. We need to get their attention, and we haven't been able to do it today. So before anything else is said, we need to know whether or not we have a second. If there is no second, it dies for lack. Once. Twice. Motion dies. Anything else? I know I would like to bring up something that was talked about early in the budget process, and that is the value of bringing a lobbyist on board for both, it would help the city with Montgomery and in Washington. This would be a professional service. I am somewhat involved in Montgomery because of the business that I'm in, and even back when Mayor Patelis was here, he had floor rights to be able to go on the House floor, as long as he wasn't lobbying for the city. But the House, at least, has already seen about a 25% change in the faces, and it's estimated next year it could change again by another 30%. I don't know that you'll see quite as many changes in the Senate, but that's between the last election, this election, that's going to be over 50% of the members of the House various agencies, both in Montgomery and in Washington, cities leaving money on the table that we could bring to the citizens of Hoover and do good things with the funds, whether they be for low-income families or whether they be for infrastructure, things like that. I think we've got opportunities that somebody else is taking advantage of because Hoover's not at the table. Personally, I wouldn't mind seeing that we go with the funds that the mayor and Mr. Rice brought to the table early. I think we've got the money to be able to do it. It's already been shown. It's a fair amount, but it's menial, and you're gonna turn that much money into surplus funding. And with someone like this, I think that it's gonna take $8 million to maybe turn it into 15. I really think that it would help. I know that we're supposed to have a group here tonight to talk about roads. That is another area that we can get great assistance with, especially if we have a lobbyist that's on wonderful terms with the governor. I think she's got an excellent chance of going back and being elected instead of just rising because of difficulties of the past. So I'd like to listen to see what the other members have to say.
Mr. President, if I may speak to that, I appreciate
Yes, sir.
very much you bringing that up, and I'm in full concurrence with you. During our budget hearings, we talked about this, and may remind me, was there a $90,000 figure that you? 70, okay. Another
78,000.
78,000. I talked about a specific example that I felt like, to no one's fault, we were caught with our pants down, pardon the phrase, but that cost our school system a considerable amount of money. I'm not suggesting that had we had representation, that would have been changed, but certainly we would have been better prepared, and I feel certain would have had a seat at the table, at least to have a conversation on that before it was passed. So I certainly see the value in it. I appreciate you bringing it up, and on both fronts, both the state and the federal level.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I agree with you, Mr. Whitehead, about this. One of the things that I see is when I look around at other cities like Huntsville and other cities around the state, I see the economic opportunities and the development that they're getting from having such a person that they can go into a committee meeting in Montgomery or in Washington and get in somebody's ears and say, hey, Hoover's got some land, and this industrial project would work on this land. If we're looking at declining revenue because of what we've invested in as far as brick and mortar stores, the only way that we're going to find another revenue engine is to have someone there that when these ideas are pitched, they're going in offices, having conversations, and bringing them to Hoover. So that's one of the reasons, in addition to the ones that you gentlemen pointed out, that I think we need somebody there to have those discussions. Otherwise, we're going to continue to watch big industry projects go to our neighbors. And if we were looking for another revenue engine, looking at STEM-based industry here, we definitely need someone there that can get in those conversations and bring them here.
Mr. President,
Yes, sir.
I had the privilege of talking to Tuscaloosa's mayor earlier this week, and they do have a lobbyist. They pay the lobbyist $40,000 a year. I've had that same lobbyist now for 6 years, and Matt said that lobbyist has just been invaluable to their city for that amount. But he talked more about not money that they specifically received, but just about the knowledge that they received from this lobbyist to keep on top of everything around there in the legislature.
Did they happen to say what they got for the $40,000? Because I know there are a lot of lobbyists that would charge you a watch fee, but if you want to get any specific projects going or any work effort going, then they're going to want a fee on top of that. They haven't mentioned.
$1,000, and Tuscaloosa was very happy with that.
also, as we talked about the small cell and some of these other technology-based things, the conventional wisdom is that, because this has happened in a couple neighboring states, whereas as cities try to preserve their revenue models, as they try to make sure that their right-of-way is protected and they look out for the city's interest, and in several states, the telecoms have come in and kind of created blanket laws that take that power away from the city. You see that happen more and more with various things that are going to be very important to the future. So I think it's a great idea to have a seat at the table and make sure that we're represented, not just as cities in general, but specific to us, since we have unique needs in that area. So I would agree. I think it's a good idea.
Anything else from the council? I guess if we're going to consider, yes, we're going to need a motion.
Mr. President, I would move that the budget be amended as presented to include a $78,000 line item for government affairs representation at both the state and federal level.
Second.
What was the dollar value again?
$78,000.
Okay. All right, any other conversation?
Yes, sir, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I have a question. Would this be a lobbyist for, under the authority of the council, or are we approving this for the mayor's office? Because
It's a good question.
my understanding is that we provide the funds, but the mayor steers the ship. So he's got to be on board with.
But like any other, Mr. President, if I may, I would expect that like any other contract that the mayor enters into with a representation firm, that contract would come to us for approval. Is that fair?
Customary. Mayor, do you have anything you'd like to bring to the discussion?
I appreciate y'all considering this. Everything that you said, I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's going to be valuable to us. We don't have the expertise or the time to be lobbying in Montgomery or in Washington, D.C. Here, money is certainly one issue, but just being aware of some of the things that affect our city every day. Mr. Leiter gave one in particular, but there are numerous opportunities that we probably missed because we just didn't know. So I applaud you for putting that back in. I think it's a great idea.
So I guess, Mr. Leiter, you might amend your budget to the mayor's portion of the budget.
Certainly, yeah, I would amend it to go to the mayor's portion of the budget with final approval coming to council.
Good. Any other comments from the council?
Second on that.
Let's see, I thought I had Dr. Middlebrooks. Did you make, no, you made the previous motion. You seconded, Mr. President. Yes. Yeah, what we'll do, when we come to the full document, we'll be voting on the amended version. So, I guess it's only fair, any comments from the audience about this topic? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mayor. Something else to do. Any other budget conversation needs to be had about any departments? I know a lot of us have kept the mayor's staff very busy this week. So is there anything else that the council wants to bring up prior to voting the budget?
I'll just say real quick, since a lot of people have said thank yous, we worked really hard on the court budget, and the mayor's staff. It's a little rough and tumble here and there because as you're balancing the needs of justice versus the needs of spending money, and it all came together beautifully at the end, and I would just like to thank the mayor's staff and Alan, Mr. Rice, and Susan for working together on that, because that was an interesting process, but everything worked out well.
Any comments or questions from the audience? Quiet tonight. Arnold. I would be disturbed if you didn't talk with us. There's a gentleman that Dr. Lopez had such country humor and wisdom. Sorry? Mr. Bice, yes. You are our Mr. Bice. I'm not sure how to pick, I'm not from the country. From New Jersey. New Jersey. New Jersey. Arnold Singer, 613 River Haven Place. If you recall, public comment portion at the last council meeting, I brought up the point about building permit fees and things of that nature. And after the meeting, I had a builder come up to me and say, you know, Hoover has the second highest building permit fees. Considering that we haven't raised building permit fees in well over a decade, maybe over 2 decades, but in the meantime, the cost of providing those services has gone up. And I think it's important that we take a look at what our real costs are for providing services and make the adjustments accordingly. And so, you know, building permits is one area. I mentioned also the sewer for the 2 pumping stations that we have, where, as I understand it, the operating expenses are covered, but certainly not the cost of the bond payments. Again, we need to bring things up to snuff. It's not going to be big dollars, but I think it shows that we're dealing with entities that are for-profit, and I think we should get our share. Are you recommending a residency tax?
No.
I have a residency tax, you know that. Just want to make sure. But by the way, you know, on an overall basis, I had wondered for years how the city's cash balance stayed at $31 million. And I didn't find that out until earlier this year when it was mentioned that we have the $31 million, and each year we add $100,000 to it. Now we're up to $32 million. So I guess we'll hear that number for the next 7 or 8 years. But I think it is really very interesting that the money gets, the quote, surplus gets put into capital, is not earmarked for anything, and is there. It represents, to me, very good accounting practices. And by the way, since I was the only member of the public that was at the Investment Advisory Committee, I really have to say that the people that from that firm were really, really good. I spent time working on Wall Street. I understand a lot of those things, and it was the simplest explanation of difficult stuff that I've yet seen. Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, anything else from the audience? Anything else from the council? Any other line item issues that you want to visit? Mayor, do you have anything else you want? All right, I guess now we need to adjust a motion to a motion for the amended budget.
Mr. President, I'm prepared to do that. I would move that we approve resolution, or I move for the approval of resolution 567117 under the previous made motions to amend the budget.
Second.
All right, does that satisfy our needs, Mr. Boyd?
Yes, I think that was a belt and suspenders because the main motion was amended by the previous 2 amendments.
Right.
So.
All right. All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Gray.
Aye.
Mr. Lyda.
Aye.
Dr. Middlebrooks.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Mr. Posey.
Aye.
Mr. Shaw.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye. It's great that we could be unanimous on I would like to commend my colleagues. I know there was a lot of phone calls that took place between people trying to understand various portions of the budget, both between council members and between staff, especially Dr. Lopez and Mr. Price. This body got a lot done in a very short period of time. The initial budget was offered on September 5th, and it was greatly adjusted by last Friday. Basically, we all had to start over and look at it again. The capital budget was given to us 2 days ago. So this body has done a lot of homework. I know I haven't accomplished anything, but I've got numbers floating in my head. I think I told Ms. Hanley earlier that I'm starting to dream about this budget. But I want to commend my colleagues and at the same time compliment the mayor and staff. But hopefully next year maybe we can get a full 2 weeks for the final version. That way I can try to earn a living and read. Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the council?
I'll just comment, Mr. President, if I may, that, you know, it was I'll stop short of saying guarantee, it was certainly a hope that this administration would pass the budget before October 1st. I will say it's the first time since I've been on this dais that we've done it, and the thanks goes to you guys, so thank you very much for making that work.
Anything else from the council while we're congratulating each other? I'm hearing none. Normally at a call meeting, there is not a section for public participation. I'd understood there was going to be some people here to talk about some roadways. How about you come and just try to spend 3 to 5 minutes? And I think I already know what your answer is going to be. Mr. Lyda, if you would like to go to your son's game, I don't think anyone would object.
I will be very brief. First, thanks for making a little bit of space for us. I'm Ron Copeland. I've lived in Greystone Cove for 12 years, and I've been a participant on the Homeowners Association for 10. Kind of one of those things, once you're on, you never get off. And I'm here today. Huh?
Be careful what you ask for.
Yeah. Our president is absent. He resigned and moved from the neighborhood, so I'm kind of filling in with this request. Our neighbor is very aware of our streets, so let me just give you the quick facts. The Cove of Greystone right now is the only Greystone community that doesn't have a gate. It was originally planned to be a gated community with private roads. When the last developer left, somehow those streets were all deeded public. 3 different phases of the neighborhood were all deeded public, with no neighborhood participation and no neighborhood awareness.
Is this at the rear gates, the community?
Well, Greystone Cove sits adjacent to Shoal Creek on Highway 41. We are the last leaf on the Hoover City tree, I think, except for Brock's Point, which is now going to be the last leaf. We'll be the next to the last leaf. So our streets are in pretty bad shape. I think the phase 1 is 20 years old, and the last phase, which is the back of the neighborhood, is at least 15 years old, because we've been there for 12 years, and my neighbor's been there 15. We've never seen any action on the streets. The concern started last year when we were told that our streets were recognized by the city of Hoover as being private with no plans to have any maintenance or payment by a city employee. So we made sure that the Homeowners Association made sure that we communicated to the city of Hoover that we are public streets and we do not have a reserve for those streets. And that we wanted to know when the budget would be allocated to repay them. I think they were in the budget in 2017 and pulled. So our intention here is simply to make you aware and ask for consideration of the 2018 budget. Now that you've already passed it, we're probably a little bit late, but hopefully there's a little bit of space there. And really just answer any questions and then maybe get guidance from you what we should do to move forward.
First, I think you could probably give some very good promises for the next election. After that. And speaking to Mr. Rice, or the mayor, do you have something to say?
I am not aware of that being on last year, on our 2017 budget, we did not cut that from anything. It's never been presented to us. And I'll be honest with you, it's the first I've heard of it. Now, that doesn't mean that I know you've done it, just hasn't.
Yeah, I don't, our president at the time is Sebastian Kidd, and he communicated to somebody, I think in the Streets or Roads Department. I don't know who that is, but I can certainly find out.
Well, can we just give us an opportunity to go out and investigate it? And certainly, that's not how we operate. And if your roads need to be paved and we're allowed to pave them, we're certainly going to do that. So give us some time. It won't take long. Get our staff involved in it and see if we can't get this corrected or get you an answer.
That'd be great.
That was,
Yes, sir.
that was gonna be my recommendation, that you get with Mr. Long, Mr. Rice, and the mayor. And, I think Mr. Rice made a comment to me this evening, the parts of the road that are uneven, we might can deal with fairly quick. When it comes to repaving all of the roads back in there, we're gonna have to see where we can fit it in with, we have a certain amount of roads that we can pave with the, gas tax fund that the city receives every year. And I think we generally pay, what, about 3 miles of streets, not a little bit. You pay. And,
Usually a couple $1 million.
yeah. So hopefully, like the mayor said, if there's any way we can address it and do it within this coming budget year, obviously we'll do everything we can.
Each of you on the city commission have an email from me with the pictures on it. Could have sent you a lot more megabytes, but the spot that he was referring to, there is one location on the main road of Graceland Cove Drive that has been patched 5 or 6 times and continues to sink.
Who does the patchwork?
I guess the city of Hoover's doing it. I don't know. The lady that lives directly in front of that curve could probably tell you, because she's had a lengthy conversation with several of us.
Very good.
Mr. President, can I ask a
Yes,
question?
sir.
Okay, the paperwork where this was needed, a public road instead of private road, who has a copy of the paperwork?
Somewhere in previous homeowner association records, I could dig those up, pretty sure.
If it's a dedicated street, the city should have
You should have the paperwork.
documentation, and at that time, a bond was probably placed.
Right.
I'm assuming that at the time that's gone by, the bond has probably been released.
My understanding, and I'm just giving you from what I was told when I was on the board, is that the developer's name was Marlowe. When he left, he took whatever bond surety he had, filed personal and business bankruptcy and moved for it. Because a year after we moved in, understanding that the gates would be closed, we had to assess the entire neighborhood just to repair the swim and tennis facility.
You can't take the bond with.
There was nothing left in the neighborhood, let's put it
City
that way.
has to release the bond, and like I said, having been such a long period of time, it's very likely that it may have been released. But Ms. Westhoven and Mr. Long, y'all may check into that as well. All right?
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Mr. President, just one quick comment, and I know the staff is kind of limited in engineering, but when we pave roads in certain areas, verifying if we have a lot of patchwork in those roads, and possibly getting with the utility company to see if they need to replace their piping prior, saves us, because we have a brand new road, and then the next week, we'll be cutting a hole in it because water or whatever. So, again, I know the staffing is very limited in the engineering department as far as inspection with those two. So it's, if we can look at that starting now, evaluating roads for patchwork for utilities to come, please get with them and replace it prior to us doing work.
Well, I don't know if, Ms. Long, Roger, if you want to comment, but I know that every year we have a third-party vendor that grades all the streets in Hoover. And then we use that grading chart to help determine what streets are going to receive repaving and which aren't. fair, leave.